So what genres do you currently like to write in, and why?
Currently, I'm doing mostly epic fantasy, with I don't want to say really a dark edge, but I feel like more of a realistic edge
Mm.
in the sense of um, like characters dealing with real world problems, like True in Shroud of Whispers is dealing with addiction and things like that. I don't want to, because it is for entertainment. You don't want to stare into the abyss, but you want to give people something like, okay, this could really happen, as opposed
Yeah, yeah,
to like, oh, they always make the right decision and it's always perfect and all that kind of stuff. I kind of like a little bit of people making mistakes and doing the wrong thing every once in a while too. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I just got done. I totally get that because I just got done reading Tim Akers, The Memory and the Maze, and his character Lloyd, like you start off book one. It's like they're novellas, but they're not too long, but they're really good. His world building's amazing, magic system's great. But like yeah, like he's it's like so heavy at times, but like he does it in a way where like, you feel it, and especially in novella I think it's hard to really write that emotion, but yeah, so I totally get what you're saying, and I like he's like I've asked him before, I was like, how are you marketing this, and it's kind of hard because it's like not really grim dark, not really dark fantasy, right? So yeah, I
yeah,
totally get that. It gets difficult after a while. Like I have some stuff that I'm writing which I'm starting to label historical urban fantasy because it's happening in my urban fantasy world, but it's like, like they're like prequels, and you want to be like, oh, what happened before this kind of thing? Because there's not much like that, and I think it's interesting when people just kind of write what they want to write, because it's interesting, because I think that's where like we get cool things like the RPG, cozy fantasy, like
yeah,
romantasy. Yeah, so I think genre sometimes I ask genre, but I love when people answer that way because I totally understand that. Because that's what I like to read. I like to read a mixture, of different genres because I think you get a really cool new and unique product that way. So I think that makes
yeah.
total sense.
Because the project I'm working on this year that I've kind of started, it has more of a humorous tone, but then I started working on the world and I kind of came up with a dark idea for the background. So it's like you have this kind of silly, not dumb character, but kind of a silly character, and then it's like, wow, his world is terrible. I don't I don't want to live there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel that you'll do well with that. That's just basically Dungeon Crawler Carl and Carl like in a nutshell. Like, yeah, I love people love the humor. I remember people specifically when that first came out, and I talked to people, they're like, "Oh, that's not going to do well," and I was like, "No, no, I think that sounds really interesting." I said, "I think it's also about how you write something, and then how you market it." And I
Yeah,
think he did a good job.
you have to put some humor into it, especially if you deal with some real dark or real serious situations, because you got to break the tension, not in the middle of the scene, but at
Yeah.
some point you've got to ease that back. I was watching this guy who was a former tanker in the army, and they're in a firefight, and he looks at his gunner and goes, "Mondays, am I right?" It's like, yeah, that's gonna happen. You're gonna have to break the tension instead of just like just sitting in the dark all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where personally, maybe to other people personally, I did not like certain things about the DC movies and stuff, like Batman versus Superman. Like, they're just, yeah, it was just like so serious all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that's where Marvel did a better job of, doing serious things, but also breaking the tension. Yeah, and giving you, yeah, some fun along the way, even with these, gods and goddesses and these all shifts in a galaxy and stuff. Yeah, and like I think they dealt with some interesting concepts, right? Is like imagine being here today and then all of a sudden tomorrow you realize like superheroes and the world's a lot bigger and the universe is a lot bigger and we're not top of the food chain, so to speak, right? But I think that like what you said, I think they did a good job, kind of mixing it up a little, and yeah, taking the stress off of a stressful
Yeah.
thing if you really think about it. So yeah, I think that makes total sense. Well, I'm really looking forward to your take on like a humorous like fantasy like that. That sounds awesome. I love humor myself, so as my students would say, I probably use humor too much at times, but there was some point where my students was like, "Do you like write a lot of humorous things in your books?" I said, "No," I said, "but I like to do the Marvel thing. We're like breaking it up." I said, "I think sometimes I write things I'm not trying to be funny, but I try to break the tension," like you said, and they end up being funny. So I think that's a good way to look at it. But that's super cool.